Man, it has been awful in the stock market. Today alone, the stock market dropped another 2%. I'm making this on Friday, this September 23rd. The market dropped another 2%. If we look at the last 5 days, the market is down almost 5%. If we look in the last month, the market is down 10%. If we look in the last 6 months, the market is down almost 20%. And a year to date, we are straight on in a bear market, with the market being down more than 23%. It's much more worse when we look at the NASDAQ, which is down 32%. It is looking terrible and painful in the stock market right now for anybody who's paying attention to it. So to some of y'all, I would say like, probably don't, but if you're a nerd like me who literally looks at this thing almost every single day, I've actually turned it into some sort of game. My coworkers was making fun of me the other day because I was celebrating that the stock market was crashing. It was like, you are a degenerate, my friend. How can you celebrate this? And I was trying to explain it to him in the best way possible, but I couldn't find a good way to explain it to him. And then I remembered something that I had read from Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money, where he talked about this, where he mentioned the idea of volatility. So he mentioned in the book, he said something about nothing in this world is free. There's always a price to pay for every single thing. And then he talked about volatility and talked about the stock market. And he used a frame of reference that I've never heard anybody talk about before. He said fees versus fines. And if we think about that, we're like, there's no difference between a fee and a fine. But really, when we think a little bit deeper about it, there is a major difference. He says, fees are something you pay for admission to get something worthwhile in return. Fines are punishment for doing something wrong. So think about it this way. When I'm speeding down the interstate and I see them blue lights, and they pull me over, that's a fine. And I get that speeding ticket, they hitting me with a fine. It's not something that I want to pay. I'm not actively looking for the cop and saying, yo, Mr. Popo, come give me this fine. Come give me this ticket. No, it's something you don't want to pay. It's something you get for doing something wrong. On the other side, I just got some tickets to go to the Atlanta United game in a couple of weeks, the last Atlanta United home game for the season. That was a fee. I paid a fee to get access to something that I actually wanted. That is a fee. I'm willing to pay that. In fact, I want to pay that because it gives me access to something that I actually find worthwhile. It's the same way in the stock market. He says in his blog, he says, it sounds trivial, but thinking of volatility and drawdown / uncertainty / pain / terror / ulcers as fees instead of fines is an important part of developing the kind of mindset that lets you stick around long enough for compounding to work. In other words, in order to get the returns, let's go back into the stock market page a second ago. If we look at the max history of the stock market, if we look at for all those who have been investing since 1990, they saw their money get eviscerated in 2000. I mean, at one point it dropped all the way to, it dropped like 80% in 2000. It was bad. It took 10 plus years for them to get back even. And then shortly after it got back even, boom, once again, they got smacked in the face, and it took another 8 plus years or another like 6 to 8 years for them to get back even again. They got slapped in the face twice, from 1990 till 2008. And then shortly after 2008, boom, it got smacked again onto 2013. But then when you look at the returns that they've had from 1990 all the way to today, that's 9x. 9x. If they stuck by it, if they continue to invest during that time period, they've made a good bit of money. They've made 9 times whatever dime that they've been putting in. If they stuck to their strategy of continuing to dollar cost average, of continuing to invest over time, they will see the return for the fee that they paid, which was the volatility and the crashing of the markets, the regular ups and downs in the market. They paid the price, right? They paid the price in order to get the reward of now they're probably retiring and saying, yo, I got millions and millions of dollars in the bank. It looks good. So when you think of investing, when you're investing in your 401k, your IRA, all of these things, investing in index funds and all these things, remember that volatility is not a fine. It's not something you don't want. It's not something you don't want to pay, because in order for us to get those great returns, you have to go through these downturns. You have to go through the pain so that you can buy these things when they're cheaper And then on the back end, earn the return that you actually want to get. So you have to view it not as a fine that you don't want to pay, but rather view it as a fee of you getting access to something, of you getting access to being able to build wealth over the long run. I like the way Morgan Housel talks about it in his blog again. He says, few investors have the disposition to say, I'm actually fine if I lose 20% or more of my money. This is doubly true for new investors, which most of us are new investors who haven't experienced a 20% decline. But for a reason declines hurt and scare so many investors off is because they think of them as fines. You're not supposed to get fined. You're supposed to make decisions that preempt and avoid fines. Traffic fines and IRS fines means you did something wrong and deserve to be punished. The natural response for anyone who watches their wealth decline and views that drop as a fine is to avoid future fines. But if you view volatility as a fee, things look different. Think about it. Disneyland tickets cost $100, but you get an awesome day with your kids you'll never forget. Last year, more than 18 million people thought that fee was worth paying. Way more have paid for that now. Few felt the $100 paid was a punishment or a fine. The worthwhile trade-up of fees, it's obvious when it's clear you're paying one. When it's clear, you're paying one. So just formulate every time you see the market decline. Don't freak out. Remember, we still have 30 plus years of investing ahead of us. I'm speaking mainly to people who are around my age group. My demographics show that most people who watch my channel, listen to my podcast, and follow me are within the ages of 18 to 45. Which means for each and every single one of us, even for those of y'all who are in the 45-year-old group, you still got 20 years. You still got 2 decades in this game. So don't freak out. Allow these things to play out and allow it to compound for your benefit. Don't view these things as fines, but view them as fees in order for you to actually make the money and make the returns that you want to get on the back end. So just keep that in mind whenever anybody comes to you and is like, oh my God, the market crashed again. Be like, yo, it's cool. Like, I'm cool. Like, it's fine. Actually celebrate. Actually celebrate and be like, we get to buy these great companies for cheap. Yeah, for cheap. Hey, just think about it. In 2008 or 2010, when all these companies crashed, would you have loved to buy Google? Wouldn't you have loved to buy Microsoft, Apple, all of these companies that people were just throwing away because they were freaking out, because they saw volatility and thought, I don't want to pay that price. I don't want to pay that price. But I trust you and we are willing to pay that price because it creates a brighter tomorrow, not just for ourselves, but for our family and our families and our families. All right. But I hope y'all learned 1, maybe 2 things out of this entire thing. And if you did, hit that like button. If you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button. But I'm going to catch y'all up in the next one. Remember, generosity is always greater than greed. God bless each and every single one of y'all. And your boy is out of here. Peace. Whoosh.